I had been dead for a year, and Leo still thought I was traveling abroad. He was only focused on his first love, Tina, providing her with resources. In just 3 years, Tina had transformed from a delicate flower into a top celebrity in the entertainment industry. As for me, he only remembered the last thing I told him: Leo, I'm going on a trip, and it will be for a very long time. I assumed that, given his indifferent attitude towards me, it would take him a long time to learn about my death. Unexpectedly, a male reporter dug up the news of my demise. At a fan meeting attended by Leo and Tina, a male reporter sharply questioned him: Mr. Leo, your wife, Miss Susan, has been dead for a year now. Have you thought about her? From above, I watched as Leo's facial expression turned bizarre in an instant. What are you talking about? His tone was pressing. I said, your wife has been dead for a year. Leo interrupted him, his expression darkening. Where did you get that information? When did Susan die? The reporter was shocked. Mr. Leo, weren't you aware of your wife's passing due to heart disease? Then the whole room was stunned. Yes, aside from my closest family, no one knew that I had died a year ago. Tina's manager stepped forward. Please, let's not get off topic. Today is Miss Tina's fan meeting. I saw Leo quickly step down from the stage and walked towards his assistant. Peter, phone. Was he going to call me? I floated closer and saw him indeed scrolling through his contacts. Unfortunately, he couldn't find my number because he had blocked and deleted me. He tried searching my name in the search box. Susan, nothing. His fingers trembled as he typed, crazy woman. Still nothing. I only then realized that he had saved me in his contacts as crazy woman. Peter, the assistant, pulled up my number on his phone and handed it over. Mr. Leo, here is your wife's phone number. He took it and immediately dialed. But I had already passed away, and my mobile number had long been deactivated and reassigned. Susan, he sounded desperate, but the person who answered the call was not me. They kindly informed him that they had purchased the number 6 months ago after the previous owner had deactivated it. I saw him trembling as he held the phone. I floated around him, sighed, and wondered what was wrong with him. Could it be that he was overwhelmed with grief, contrary to what he once told me? Susan, rest assured, if you really died, I wouldn't be sad because I would finally be free. A reporter pushed past the security and rushed towards the inner field. Mr. Leo, as Mrs. Susan's husband, how come you only just learned of her passing? Have you both been so devoid of emotion that you don't even bother each other anymore? You didn't even know about each other's passing. Rumors have always suggested that your greatest love was actually our top star, Tina. Is that true? These reporters, who had just learned of the passing of the wife of the president of the Lincoln family conglomerate, were also shocked, but one male reporter produced my death certificate and a photo of my tombstone in Paradise Park. They had no choice but to believe that the daughter of the Smith family, who was also the wife of the president of the Lincoln family, had indeed passed away. Leo, escorted by his bodyguards, left the press conference early. Was he heading to the Smith family? I kept floating behind his car. Upon his arrival, the gates of the Smith family were tightly closed. I floated in easily, but he was stopped at the gate. Did he come to confirm with my parents that I had really died? He rang the doorbell, and the maid, Lucy, came out, her face darkening for a moment before she went back inside. I knew Lucy despised him. She had seen Leo leave me, feverish, to answer Tina's call. I quickly floated to the inner room and saw Lucy reporting to my father. Leo is here. Waiting outside, as expected, my father wouldn't open the door or pay any attention to Leo, not even interested in why he came. I sat on the living room sofa for a while. My father kept a stern face, reading his newspaper. After enough sitting, I floated out to see if Leo had left. Under the scorching sun, he stood rigid, still there. When did he become so tolerant of the heat? He still hadn't left. Peter, his assistant, took a phone call and walked over to Leo. Mr. Leo, I've had it investigated thoroughly. Your wife did indeed pass away from a heart attack a year ago and was buried in Paradise Park. The Smith family handled it, did not notify outsiders, and kept the news hidden. Leo covered his face. Didn't she tell me she was going abroad for a long trip? I remember every single word she said. Clearly, Peter's assistant paused for a moment before speaking. No, there were no records of her going abroad. That might have been an excuse, perhaps by then. She knew she wouldn't live much longer, maybe she loved you too much, and since you were with Miss Tina, I don't know why, but the result was that she chose to quietly leave this world. Leo stood at the Smith family's gate until it grew dark, and I floated beside him until it turned dark too. In the vast villa, no one came out to give Leo a glance. Mr. Leo, shall we keep waiting? Let's go home. Leo turned around and got into the car. I slipped in too and sat beside him. However, I am a ghost. And he can't see me. Peter's assistant turned around and confirmed, Mr. Leo, did you say you were going home? To Starland? Starland? I was surprised. Starland was the name I gave to our marital home where Leo and I were supposed to start our life together. However, after our wedding, I was the only one living there. Leo rarely came back, mostly staying in hotels. Leo's phone buzzed. Bzzz. He picked it up, and I leaned in to see that it was Tina calling. He pinched the bridge of his nose before answering. Tina immediately asked, Leo, aren't you staying at the hotel tonight? You go to sleep early. I'm still busy. Is it true that Susan has passed away? Just go to sleep. Then where are you staying tonight? I'll come and join you. Tina softened her tone. No need. Goodbye. Leo hung up, and I stared at him, dumbfounded. It seemed like the first time I saw Leo hang up on Tina first. I remember the day I had a fever. Leo rarely stayed home to take care of me. I was in pain all over from the fever, but my heart felt incredibly happy. However, in the middle of it, Tina called, crying and shouting, Leo, I'm lost. Someone is following me. I'm so scared. Come pick me up. Don't go, husband. I feel so bad too. I mumbled, raising a hand in my delirium, grasping at nothing. He had already grabbed his coat and was striding out the door. Where are you? I'll come right away. Don't hang up. I was left bewildered. Recalling the memory, Leo replied, to Starland. When we arrived at the doorstep, Leo pressed his fingerprint, and the door dinged open, but he closed his eyes and held the doorknob, not stepping in immediately. I floated in first, and then he finally opened the door and entered. Inside, the house no longer had the lively atmosphere of the past. It was covered in dust everywhere. I sneezed. It seemed Leo hadn't been back for a year. Leo looked around and then headed to the bedroom. What was he doing in the bedroom? I immediately followed. The bedroom was arranged as I had left it, but every item was coated in dust. What was Leo looking at? I floated over, and he was staring blankly at the half-empty wardrobe. Inside, only his neatly arranged clothes remained. My clothes, I had packed them all and taken them away. In fact, in this house, anything of mine that I could take, I had taken. Our failed marriage made me want to remove all traces of myself. I remember the last time we met, I had packed my bags, and Leo, who rarely came back, returned to pick up some things. Where are you going? He tossed a few clothes into his suitcase and was ready to leave, just some clothes to change into. Oh. My disappointment was visible, but I had long grown accustomed to such scenes. Still, I couldn't suppress the sadness. He was completely indifferent to me. He hadn't noticed the packed suitcase in the closet, signaling my departure. When will you be back next? Next time, I probably won't be here anymore, not here, or in this world. By then, the hospital had already diagnosed me with an enlarged heart. A situation beyond control, with death looming. He looked at me coldly. I guess there's no need for me to come back here anymore. I paused for a moment. Finally, I softly responded, oh. He had his luggage and was at the door, but he stood there for a while, not leaving, which puzzled me. He then spoke up, you're not asking about Tina this time. There's no point in asking. It doesn't matter to me anymore. He turned around, somewhat surprised. You're different this time. For once, we made eye contact. Perhaps it was because this time I hadn't nagged about Tina like a foolish woman, giving his ears a break. His look was unusually tender. I smiled gently. Leo, I'm going on a long trip. He paused for a moment. That's good. A trip might broaden your mind. Have a pleasant journey. Despite being a couple, he didn't ask where I was going or offer to come with me. He just wished me a pleasant journey. I should have felt terrible, but surprisingly, I accepted it calmly that day, an hour after he left. I placed the divorce papers and wedding ring on the coffee table, locked up, and left. On the drive back to the Smith family, I couldn't help but cry. the sounds of anguish spilling from my throat. From a young age, I was stubborn about my choices. After falling for Leo, I never thought there would come a day when I would stop liking him or give up. Sadly, this marriage ended in complete failure. Leo left the closet and then looked towards my now empty dressing table. He seemed to not believe his eyes and opened the small drawer of the dressing table. It was empty. He checked the bathroom too. None of my belongings were there. Took everything. He came out and stared at the bedside. What was he looking at? There was nothing on the headboard. As I puzzled over this, he grunted, "Even your prized wedding photo is gone. It looks like you had everything planned out long ago." Suddenly, he punched the wall, and with a loud bang, his skin split open. I was so startled that I drifted a bit further away, confused. I watched him. What was he doing? I thought he would leave quickly after seeing this, but instead, he sat down on the dusty bed and lay back. Time ticked by, minute by minute. He closed his eyes and fell asleep without even pulling the covers over himself. He was woken by a phone call, again from Tina. Leo slowly opened his eyes, tiredly bringing the phone to his ear. On the other end, Tina spoke in a coquettish tone, "Leo, I can't sleep. Will you come and keep me company?" Leo let out a heavy sigh. "Tina, I'm really tired today." "Stop it." Tina's tone became more cautious. "Is it something work-related, or is it because of Susan? If you can't sleep, have Kathy chat with you. Don't call me unless it's important." Before Leo hung up, Tina had more to say, but the line was already cut. He looked at his hand, noticing the blood had already clotted. Something seemed to strike him, and he abruptly stood up and went to the living room. My heart also raced as I followed him. He must have remembered the divorce papers on the coffee table. Sure enough, he scanned the living room, walked over to the coffee table, and picked up the divorce papers, flipping through them tightly. "But I hadn't asked for anything, only taking my personal belongings with me," he had said before. "Susan, since you show no remorse, I've stopped that card. When you are ready to repent, I'll reactivate it." During a period after our marriage, in an attempt to get his attention, I had spitefully used his card. The reason he stopped the card was not because of how much money I had spent, but because he was punishing me. He had slapped Tina and stubbornly refused to apologize. That day, I was in a store eyeing a handbag when the scent of a limited edition perfume wafted by. "Miss Tina, we just got a new handbag in. Would you like to check it out?" "I want the one she's holding," said Tina, pointing directly at the handbag I was holding. Her red lips curled in determination. Turning back, I pushed the handbag towards the clerk. "Wrap this up, I'll take it." The clerk glanced at the palpable tension between us, unsure of what to do. Still, she began to package the handbag for me since I had shown interest first. Tina, undeterred, flipped her long hair. "Are you sure? Do you want to lose me as a major customer?" "Miss Tina, we will immediately contact other counters and get one for you. Please wait a moment." This bag was indeed first spotted by Miss Susan, the clerk insisted. Tina looked at me, her eyes filled with infuriated embarrassment. "Even if you buy the bag, do you have someone to shop with?" "No one. Leo never comes home. Have you ever thought about who he stays with when he doesn't return? Do you naively think he stays in a hotel alone? Go ask around the entertainment industry. Who really has my back?" Tina's victorious demeanor that day pierced me like a sword. Yet I still stepped closer to her, smiling. "Have you not figured out why I am still in this marriage? Is it because I still love him?" "Wrong, it's to keep you from becoming Leo's wife." I saw the shock in Tina's eyes. "You are truly despicable." Tina raised her hand to slap me, but I caught her first, slapped her back, and walked away. The incident of me slapping Tina was quickly reported to Leo by her. "Go apologize to Tina." That night, the bedroom light was off. Leo came back, a cigarette between his fingers, the darkness dotted with crimson. That day, my heart was completely broken. I sat on the bed, staring into the night, speaking faintly. "If you want to apologize, go ahead. I don't think I did anything wrong. If you really think I was wrong, you are my husband. We are one in marriage. Your apology could also represent me." I saw his cigarette tremble between his fingers, a sign of his anger. We were at a standoff for a few minutes until he finished his cigarette and started looking at his phone. "You spent another 200,000 today. Since you refused to apologize, I'm cutting off your card. It will be restored when you apologize." I said nothing. My heart had become numb and stiff. Just like he never understands why I suddenly started racking up charges on his card. Did I really love his money? I'd been raised with a silver spoon. I lacked many things, but money was never one of them. Using the card was a vengeful act intended to get his attention. In the last semester of my senior year, Tina went abroad with a musical prodigy. Leo was drowning his sorrows in a bar. I was worried about him and found him at the bar. That night, a drunk Leo pulled me to a hotel. Leo. I'm not Tina, I'm Susan. See clearly, I know, Tina has left. She won't come back. No too. I know you're Susan. Susan, please don't reject me. Okay. A night of turmoil. The next day, he looked at a mark on the bedsheet and held trembling me. Trust me, I'll take care of it. We'll get married after graduation. I gradually calmed down, sniffled, and looked up with a smile. Okay, then I'll be the most beautiful bride. I had a secret crush on Leo, and he could feel it. He bent his finger and tapped me lightly on the forehead. Fool. 3 months later, my wedding finally arrived. Since both families were well matched financially, the wedding preparations went very smoothly. The ceremony was also very warm and intimate. However, the warmth didn't last long. A month later, Tina broke up with the musical prodigy and returned to the country, dragging a suitcase. Tina stood alone at the entrance of Starlight Park. Leo, I'm back. When Tina threw herself into Leo's arms sobbing, Leo stood there stunned, not pushing her away. It turned out that the musical prodigy had developed a drug addiction abroad. His personality drastically changed, his private life became chaotic, and he even had a local girlfriend, leading to Tina being cheated on. Leo set down the divorce papers, his eyes fixed on the velvet box at the center of the coffee table. Opening it, his eyes flickered with shock. Inside was our wedding ring, which he clutched tightly in his palm. Trembling, Peter, his assistant, came in to deliver food, catching this scene, and approached cautiously. Mr. Leo, look into that male journalist. I was also curious about the origins of that journalist and how he came to know about my supposed death unless he had investigated it specifically. By dawn, Peter had found out. This journalist is Simon's cousin. Exactly. Hearing Simon's name surprised me too. He was Leo's business rival. It made sense now. Simon was Leo's competitor in business, and today, he had his cousin deliberately spread the news of my death, causing the stock price of the Lincoln family company to plummet instantly. There was a little-known fact: Simon and I were high school classmates, and I had once taken him to the hospital on my bicycle. He had been assaulted by several people, his eyes swollen to slits. That day, on a whim, I had decided to ride my newly learned bicycle home when I stumbled upon the assault and intervened, shouting, "I've already called the police." The assailants quickly fled. I then helped him to the hospital. On a downhill slope, due to my poor biking skills, we both fell, but that was 7 or 8 years ago. He probably forgot about it. At a business meeting in City H, Leo and Simon encountered each other. Leo was not in a good mood that day, drinking alone. Given his high status, others, seeing his mood, didn't dare to approach him, until Simon, holding a glass of wine, walked over. "Mr. Leo, drinking alone here." In contrast to Leo's low spirits, Simon was in a very good mood. "Let me guess why you're upset, Mr. Leo. Is it because it's been a year since your wife died, and you, her husband, just found out? Do you feel humiliated?" Leo gripped his glass tightly and shot a glance. "If you've got something to say, spit it out quickly. Don't look for validation here." It seems my earlier statement wasn't quite accurate. Is there another possibility then? A murderous look had already settled on Simon from Leo's eyes. Unfortunately, Simon showed no signs of tactfully leaving at the moment, so, our Mr. Leo, belatedly realized that the person he loves the most is still his wife, right? After all, the real Susan is several times better than Tina, who's just acting. I looked at Simon incredulously. Coldness flickered sharply in Leo's eyes. "It seems the Taylor family has been too comfortable lately. Some people are too idle." He gestured with his hand. "Assistant Peter, the Taylors will also join the bid for the docks." Now it was Simon's turn to look troubled. With the Lincoln family joining in, that lucrative deal at the docks wasn't going to be easy to secure. The business meeting concluded. Leo came out with a dark expression. "Mr. Leo, We found out that your wife's father was unwell, so he didn't attend the meeting. Continue to arrange meetings for me, any time will do. Buzz, buzz, Leo's phone rang again. It was Tina calling. Leo, where are you? I feel terrible. On the other end, Tina's voice sounded very weak. What's wrong? Tina's agent took over the phone. Mr. Leo, could you come over? Tina fainted halfway through filming today, and she's been refusing to eat anything since she woke up. If this goes on, her health will collapse. I saw Leo frown deeply. I'm coming over now, just like when I was alive. Whether Tina refused to eat or felt scared alone, Leo would go to accompany her. Leo quickly arrived at Tina's place. Tina rushed into his embrace. You finally came. I've missed you so much. Good thing I'm already dead, devoid of emotions, or else this scene might still hurt. I drifted around Tina's villa for a bit before returning, only to find Leo pushing Tina away, the atmosphere between them very cold. I told you, I can help you stabilize your position in the entertainment industry. But there's nothing possible between us anymore. Tina looked shocked. Susan is dead. Can't we be together now? Clearly, the person you loved is me. Susan's death is like heaven helping us be together. The moment you went abroad, my feelings for you died. You know, these 3 years I helped you because I felt guilty about the kidnapping you endured. But I've made amends over these years. Their conversation surprised me. The last time was my final attendance at your event. From now on, you walk your own path. Tina was suddenly very agitated. Don't forget, Susan almost killed me. You have no idea how much she hurt me. Leo's silhouette stiffened for a moment, his fists clenched tightly. Just then, Leo received a call from Peter's assistant. Mr. Leo, we have the person in the company garage. I'll be right there. Who did they kidnap? I felt as though I was floating there too. On the way, I found myself lost in thought. Tina accused me of crimes I hadn't committed. Unfortunately, Leo didn't believe me. Not long after Tina returned to the country, she was kidnapped, stripped, and photographed naked. I will never forget the night Leo came back furious. He was soaked through and lifted me up. Susan, how could you be so excessive? I promised you that even with Tina's return, we wouldn't divorce. Why must you push things to the extreme? At that moment, I was completely bewildered. I knew about Tina's kidnapping, it was in the news, but I never imagined Leo would suspect me, yet, all of this was directed at me. The day before Tina was kidnapped, we had an argument, and she recorded it. In the recording, I harshly warned Tina to stay away from Leo. If someone else had been there, they would know that my harsh words were provoked by Tina. The original conversation went like this: Susan, can we talk nicely for a moment? Initially, her tone was very subdued, and I was quite cold. At that time, I didn't expect that she had a recording pen hidden in her bag. There's no need, we have nothing to talk about. How can you say we have nothing to talk about? We both love Leo, but you have him and I've lost him. I'm so envious of you. If only I hadn't gone abroad, I wouldn't have lost him. If you're looking to complain, you've got the wrong person. Tina then changed her tone, revealing her true self, grabbing my arm as I tried to leave. Susan, I heard that the night I left for abroad, you pretended to be me, tricked Leo into being with you, and made him take responsibility. How disgusting can you be? Watch your mouth. The real disgusting person is you, getting dumped and then coming back to fawn over Leo. I'm warning you, stay away from Leo. If you mess with my marriage, I won't let you off. Humph, such big talk. Don't you believe that Leo will always stand by my side? But the recording pen didn't capture Tina calling me disgusting or her final provocation. After Tina was rescued from an accident, she curled up in bed like an injured little rabbit. Her agent then released that recording. That incident also made me realize that between me and Tina, Leo would believe Tina without hesitation. Even though the police found no evidence to prove it was my doing, he pinned the blame on me. Our marriage was severely damaged because of this. I loved him, but I also have my dignity and pride. He wronged me and didn't apologize. I couldn't forgive him. Our marriage then entered a complete cold war. Leo went down to the underground garage. When the door to the storage room was opened, I saw a male journalist being held down in a seat. They had tied up the journalist. Mr. Leo, can't we talk this over calmly? Asked Peter, his assistant, with a cold snort. I'm afraid some people just don't listen to reason, he added. The male journalist bit his lower lip. Leo suddenly threw out an incredible statement. The heart of the ocean necklace, name your price. The heart of the ocean, wasn't that the necklace I always wanted to buy, Mr. Leo? I'm just a journalist. What are you talking about? A necklace? I've never even heard of it, the journalist responded. Peter, his assistant, immediately exposed his lie. Quit pretending. You think we haven't checked your background? You're Simon's cousin, and you bought that necklace at a charity auction last year for $5 million. The journalist was stunned, and after about a minute, he cracked a smile. Huh, Mr. Leo, you figured me out so quickly. Well, I won't beat around the bush then. I didn't buy the necklace. It was my cousin who asked me to bid on it. It's with my cousin now. If Mr. Leo likes that necklace, you'll have to talk to him. Leo's brow furrowed instantly. As they left the garage, Peter asked, Mr. Leo, if the necklace is with Simon, won't he have the upper hand in negotiations? Are you still going to buy it? Yes, Leo said as he got into the car and rolled down the window. He didn't start the car right away. Instead, gazing into the dim night, he lit a cigarette. The smell of smoke drifted, and I felt a bit detached. He suddenly looked into the night and stubbed out the cigarette. Peter looked puzzled at his action. You just lit that. Why put it out? He murmured. I thought of someone. She doesn't like the smell of smoke. A small memory flashed through my mind, one of the rare moments of affection between us. He was massaging the center of my forehead. Why the frown? He asked. I stood on my tiptoes and hugged his waist. The smell of smoke makes me uncomfortable. Can you smoke less from now on? At that time, we were still planning our wedding, and Tina hadn't come back. He rubbed my head and readily agreed, okay. And he immediately put out the cigarette. Peter's assistant hesitated before speaking. Leo asked him, did you get a hold of Simon? He's been contacted, but he said he's not feeling well recently and won't meet with outsiders. Tomorrow, send over those ginseng and bird's nest from my home. Yes, Mr. Leo, you can go home. I'll drive back today. Leo started the car, and Peter's assistant bent over, looking somewhat uneasy. Mr. Leo, you look very tired. It's nothing. With a press of the accelerator, Leo drove off. The next day at noon, Leo met with Simon. Simon arrived late, his smile more of a sneer. It's really surprising, Mr. Leo, that you would take the initiative to see me. It's rare, Leo said coldly. Let's get straight to the point. I want to buy the heart of the ocean. Simon picked up his teacup, twirling it in his fingers. I like your directness, Mr. Leo. But I'm not planning to sell that necklace. Leo wasn't falling for his tactics. As businessmen, we should both understand that everything is negotiable. If the price is right, you might as well just name your price. Still, Mr. Leo, you see things clearly. But before we talk price, I want to know, what do you want this necklace for? It's a lady's necklace, Mr. Leo. Who are you planning to lavish such a fortune on? Leo's lips barely moved. Naturally, it's for the most important person to me, our big star, Tina. Simon tapped on the table again. It seems it's not for Tina. I heard that Susan also wanted this necklace, but she was delayed that day and missed out on it. Other than Susan, I don't know who else would like this necklace. I was stunned. How did Simon know so much about my affairs? Leo also narrowed his eyes in suspicion. Why do you know so much about Susan? It's just that I know a bit more compared to someone who never cares about his own wife. Leo looked deeply at Simon. Do you know Susan? We were high school classmates, so. He still remembered me. Leo was about to ask more, but Simon interrupted him. Name your price. Let's see how deep your love for Susan is. 10 million, twice the amount you originally paid for it. I'll buy it. Simon suddenly clapped his hands twice, sneering. 10 million. So, your wife is worth 10 million to you. Leo didn't get angry but instead countered. How much do you want? It's not a matter of how much, but there are two conditions you need to agree to. First, withdraw from the dockyard bidding. Leo's brow twitched. Second, wherever the Taylor family opens a branch, the Lincoln family cannot open a branch within 3 kilometers. Leo's brow twitched again. Simon's demands were increasingly stringent. If Leo agreed, the loss wouldn't just be tens of millions, it would impact the future prospects of the Lincoln family. I watched Leo intently, curious about how he would react. You're really asking for the moon here, Do you want me to bankrupt the Lincoln family over a single necklace? If that's your stance, I can't help it. I've made my offer. If Mr. Leo doesn't accept, please leave." A deadlock ensued. I wondered why Leo hadn't left yet. He couldn't possibly be considering agreeing to these terms. I floated in the air, quietly waiting to see what would happen next. Peter, the assistant, stepped forward. "Mr. Simon, if you think 10 million is not enough, how about 20 million? Keep the necklace and try selling it to someone else. At most, you'll get 10 million. These are my only conditions." No further discussion. Suddenly, Leo spoke up. "Fine, I agree. Do you have the necklace with you?" Leo agreed to Simon's draconian terms, leaving everyone in the room stunned, myself included. Peter, the assistant, reminded him in shock. "Mr. Leo, you can't agree to this." Simon was also astonished. "Are you sure you want to agree? Draft the agreement now. I want to see the necklace when we sign." Simon's expression suddenly turned sour, even regretful. He didn't really want to sell the necklace. Is it really worth it for a necklace? I know what it's worth to me. After the agreement was signed, Leo took the necklace. I gave Simon a puzzled look before following Leo out. Simon's voice followed us. "One last question. Is this necklace for Susan?" I also paused, equally curious. Was it really for me? It seemed so unlikely. I thought Leo would ignore the question, but he answered, "Haven't you figured it out yet?" My ethereal form staggered slightly. After my death, Leo risked the future of the Lincoln family to buy a necklace for me. Following Leo, I saw my dad entering a hospital across the street. My dad had always had liver issues, and I immediately became worried and floated to the hospital. "Mr. Leo, your liver condition is not optimistic. You must be hospitalized immediately to await a suitable liver transplant." I was deeply shocked. My dad's condition had worsened to the point of needing a transplant. "Just prescribed some painkillers. I'll take them home. I won't stay in the hospital." "Mr. Leo, no more discussion." I opened my mouth to persuade him to stay, but he couldn't hear me. I could only watch helplessly as my stubborn father left the hospital with his driver. In the middle of the night, after my father had fallen asleep, I drifted away from the Smith family's house, drifting aimlessly like a rootless duckweed. I know that if we can't find a liver donor soon, I'll be meeting my dad underground. I drifted back to Starlight Park and noticed the light on at the home bar. I floated in and saw Leo drinking alone in melancholy, an 82 La fight, nearly finished. He was sprawled across the table, completely drunk, his face flushed red. Next to his palm was the Heart of the Ocean box he bought from Simon. He lay at the bar, mumbling something. I moved closer and faintly heard a name. "Susan, Susan." He was calling my name over and over. For several days, Leo would come home at night and drown his sorrows at the bar, then clean up and head to the office in the morning. "Mr. Leo, you can't keep pushing yourself like this. You haven't had a proper rest for a month." "I'm fine, I'll go back after approving this report." Leo returned to Starlight Park at 11 at night. As he opened the door, there sat Tina, wearing a revealing camisole. The assistant quickly left the room. Tina stood up, her voice soft. "Leo, you're finally back. I just finished filming." As Tina's hand reached for Leo, he swiftly pulled away. Leo squinted for a moment. "How did you get in?" "Yes, I had the property manager open the door." "They have your spare keys. Put on your clothes and leave." "No, I'm not leaving tonight. Susan is dead. Why are you still keeping this empty house?" Leo's expression darkened. "Don't make me despise you." "You despise me?" "I'm not leaving. One day, I'll be the lady of this house." What was Susan anyway? If it hadn't been for her cheap move climbing into your bed, would you have married her? You know I'm the one in your heart, and what are you then? Even a good horse doesn't come back to the same grass. What makes you think I'd want you back?" "Peter, the assistant, get her out." Assistant Peter came in, picked up Tina's handbag, and handed it to her. "Let's go, Miss Tina," I said. "I'm not leaving." Tina clapped her hands, knocking her own handbag to the floor. The contents spilled out, including a transparent bag filled with green pills that landed near Leo's feet. Tina suddenly panicked, bending down to pick it up. "What is this?" But Leo was quicker, picking up the small bag first and glaring at her fiercely. Tina snatched it back, hiding it behind her. "It's nothing." Leo stared intently at her. Tina's eyes darted around, Trying to avoid his gaze, Tina couldn't bear to meet Leo's eyes. I have a new drama press conference early tomorrow morning, so I need to leave. Tina, who had been adamant about staying just moments before, now hurried to escape. Peter's assistant snapped back to reality. Mr. Leo, that item is contraband. How could Miss Tina possess it? Leo dialed Tina's number. If you don't want to die, quit it now. Tina still refused to admit anything. What are you talking about? It's just a regular pill. Leo, you're overthinking it. Fine, you've chosen your path. I assume you've also prepared yourself for the consequences. Leo's requests to meet were all rejected by my father. All the gifts he sent were thrown out as well. It was only during a business banquet that my father attended that Leo finally saw him. In the lounge, my father was resting with his eyes closed when Leo walked in, but he sensed his presence. Mr. Leo, what brings you here? Dad, who's your dad? Don't call me that. Mr. Leo, I can't bear such a title. I know you don't want to see me, but I sincerely wanted to meet you. Humph, you just want to ask why you weren't informed about Susan's death, right? You want to say, as her husband, you had the right to know that we shouldn't have kept it from you. It's because I have no right to ask about it. My father opened his eyes, startled by Leo's unexpected response. My father was waiting for Leo to say, yes, you should have told me about Susan's passing, so he could harshly reprimand him. Why should we tell you, Dad? I want the last memory disk of Susan. Could you make a copy for me? How did he know that her last days were recorded? But I refused to make a copy of the recording for Leo. Misplaced loyalty in life. Why bother him after death? My father was puzzled too. How did you know about this recording? I found the nurse who took care of Susan. She told me you took the video. The room where I stayed had a camera that recorded my final moments. Humph, give it to you, so you can mock how Susan, who was devoted to you, ended up dying a miserable death from illness. In Leo's eyes, there was sincerity. I looked closely. It didn't seem feigned. No. Whether you believe it or not, I want this video because I miss her too much. My father laughed out loud. What a joke you're making. You miss Susan. That's the biggest joke I've heard in my life. I'll give you a copy of the disc. See for yourself how, while you were entangled with Tina, your wife was curled up on the hospital bed, gritting her teeth, enduring the agony of her illness. To my surprise, my father agreed to Leo's request, which he really shouldn't have. I wanted to stop it, but couldn't. Mr. Leo, should we go back now? Your body can hardly handle it here, and who knows when the hospital will find a matching liver. Leo, reaching the door, glanced back. One day, the Kowloon District Public Security Bureau in H City arrested a suspect. Early that morning, Leo received a call from the police station. After hearing the news, he was so shocked that he crushed the glass he was holding in his hand, blood mixing with the shattered fragments. His assistant was frightened. Mr. Leo, what did they say on the phone? The next day, the entertainment industry was rocked by a scandal as Tina was taken away by the police for drug use. Soon after, the police confirmed the news through an official announcement. Within a day, all of Tina's works were removed from distribution, and her public image collapsed, causing a huge uproar. Tina's agent found Leo. Mr. Leo, please help Tina this once. If you don't help her, she's finished. Leo stood in front of a floor-to-ceiling window, the sky outside shrouded in dark clouds. Without turning, Leo said, "You've come at a good time. Join me for a meeting with someone." Has the person arrived? They're at the door now. Mr. Leo, I'll bring them in. Tina's agent suddenly felt uneasy. Meeting? Shortly, two police officers in black uniforms entered. Mr. Leo, hello. We are from the H City Public Security Bureau. We're here to apologize for a past incident. 3 years ago, during the investigation of Tina's kidnapping, we mistakenly suspected your wife, Susan. 3 days ago, we caught the actual kidnapper, Bob, who confessed that it was Tina's agent who had approached him to orchestrate the kidnapping and intentionally redirected our investigation towards your wife. The act was of a particularly vile nature. Leo's piercing gaze turned to Kathy. Do you have anything to say? Kathy's complexion had already changed, not expecting her plea for Leo's help would entangle her as well. The officers were already restraining Kathy. Miss Kathy, we can't resolve this here. Come with us to the station for a proper discussion. Kathy's legs gave out. Tina was the mastermind. I just helped her find someone. Please, officers, you must see the truth. I drifted back to the peaceful cemetery, ready to rest back in my own grave. From afar, I saw a man sleeping in front of my tombstone. Someone drunk must have wandered into the cemetery. As I floated closer, I realized it was Leo. He was actually sleeping, hugging my tombstone, and had left two velvet boxes beside him. One was my wedding ring box, the other, a jewelry box from Heart of the Ocean. I watched him in a trance, wondering if he meant for me to keep wearing the ring even in death. Additionally, I looked at the box of Heart of the Ocean. All that loss, was it just to exchange for the Heart of the Ocean necklace I liked? If these events had happened during my lifetime, no one would have dared to doubt his love for me. After spending a night sleeping in my grave, I woke up to find Leo hadn't left. I saw him bend down and kiss the name on my tombstone. Susan, I'm off to work now. I'll come to keep you company tonight. For several days in a row, whenever I drifted back at night to rest, Leo was sleeping in front of my tombstone. 3 months later, my father's liver condition worsened and he was urgently taken to the hospital. Hovering anxiously in the sky, all I could do was pray that a suitable liver donor would be found in time for him to undergo the transplant surgery. My father stayed in the hospital for a month, and I lingered there too. Then one day, we finally received good news that a suitable liver had been found, and the surgery was scheduled for the following week. We were instantly overjoyed. Doctor is the kind person who donated the liver in the hospital. If so, Tom, will me over so I can thank them personally. The attending physician shook his head. I'm sorry, the donor requested to remain anonymous. We can't disclose their identity. Anonymous. We were all stunned. My father's liver transplant was very successful. He recuperated in the hospital for another month, looking better with each passing day. This eased my worries too. The doctor said you're improving every day. After a little more time, you'll be ready to leave the hospital. I feel it too. By the way, Tom, no more porridge for lunch today. I need to eat some plain rice. How can I regain my strength with porridge every day? Tom, who was taking care of my father, slapped his thigh and laughed. Haha, right, it's about time for some rice. I was only making porridge every day because you said you had no appetite. In the hospital room, my father's laughter gradually increased. I was deeply relieved. On the evening of March 6, a car accident occurred in the city center, which was being broadcast live on the hospital room TV. This is the H City Evening News Report. Just moments ago, a car accident occurred in the city center. A silver Porsche crashed into the guardrail, severely damaging the front of the vehicle. It's preliminarily confirmed that the car belongs to Mr. Leo, CEO of the Lincoln Family Group. The extent of Mr. Leo's injuries is currently unknown. I suddenly turned around to look at the screen, just in time to see Leo, covered in blood, being carried out and placed into an ambulance. 10 minutes later, Leo was rushed into the operating room at the 3rd hospital, and I hastily floated over to his operating room. Leo lay on the bed, his lips purple and his face pale. After half an hour of emergency treatment, Leo's face grew even paler. The chief surgeon lifted his head. The doctor looked at the other colleagues in the ward. The patient is in critical condition. Just 3 months ago, he had a liver transplant and donated a major portion of his liver. The last live transplant did not go well. The incision got infected, and now, he's been in a car accident with severe organ bleeding. The assistant surgeon glanced at the blinking red equipment. The patient's will to live is very weak, or rather, he seems to have given up on surviving. A liver transplant. Leo had a liver transplant. No wonder there were over 200 stitches along his lower and side waist. Leo had a liver transplant, and someone anonymously donated half of their liver to my father. Putting 2 and 2 together, it suddenly clicked. The anonymous liver donor for my dad was Leo. It's getting worse. The patient's breathing is becoming weaker. His lips are moving. Is he trying to say something? The lead surgeon and I leaned close to Leo's lips. Susan, my wife. The lead surgeon looked up in astonishment. He's calling his wife's name, but his wife has already passed away. He's still speaking. The lead surgeon bent down again to listen. Director, what did he say? The lead surgeon looked at everyone, shook his head, and walked out of the operating room. At the same moment, Leo's heart stopped beating. The lead surgeon stopped at the door. His last words were, My wife, I'm coming to meet you. Simon's side story. In high school, I always did things my way, cool, confident, and unapologetically myself. That all changed during the summer of my senior year when four thugs cornered me on my way home from school. I recognized one of them. We had clashed on the school's sports field, where his petty moves ended with me dominating him completely, unable to handle the defeat. He gritted his teeth and warned, "Kid, you better watch out." I responded with a defiant middle finger and walked away. That weekend, as I left a friend's house after playing video games, that same guy and three of his roughneck friends were waiting for me at the alley's entrance. The tallest one threw down his cigarette and brandished an iron rod from behind his back. "Kid, bullying my little brother at school." There was no avoiding it. I had to pass through that alley to get out. A fight was inevitable. I threw down my backpack, and as one of them swung the rod at me, I rushed forward with a flying kick. In the end, I was still overpowered by a massive guy who left me with a bruised and swollen face. The instigator finally stepped forward, smiling sinisterly. "It hurts, doesn't it? Kneel and bow your head to me, and I might let you go," I spat out. "In your dreams." Right after I spoke, a punch landed on my face, through half-closed eyes. I saw a girl at the entrance of the alley, clearly frightened by the scene. Sure enough, she pedaled away on her bike, but unexpectedly, she returned seconds later, clutching a phone. "I just called the police." "Let him go." One of them, furious, moved towards her with the rod. "Mind your own business, you're asking for trouble." She turned pale with fear, but fortunately, the sound of police sirens approached, and the gang hurriedly fled. I lay on the ground, breathless, feeling as if all my organs had shifted. One eye was swollen shut. She came over and crouched down. "I've called an ambulance to take you to the hospital." "No need. It's not that serious." "Not serious," she exclaimed. "I mean, don't call an ambulance. If I have to go, I'll get to the hospital myself. I've always disliked making a fuss." "Then let me take you." She complied by not calling an ambulance but instead rode her bike over, intending to take me to the hospital herself. Watching her not so skilled biking, yet still insisting on taking me, I found it amusing. "Okay." She helped me up and pulled out a fragrant tissue to wipe the blood from the corner of my mouth. Looking into her watery eyes, my mind went blank. I knew she was from my school because she was wearing our unattractive uniform, but somehow, she made it look good on her. Perhaps it was because she was naturally beautiful, with fair skin and a prominent nose. "Sit tight." After wiping off, she got on her bicycle and gestured for me to hurry up and sit down. Once I was seated, she started pedaling with effort. It was evident she was trying hard to keep the bicycle going straight. "You can go slower, there's no rush." She spoke the truth. I didn't call the police earlier because I was afraid they might come back, and my phone was dead. "Oh, weren't you afraid they might beat you up too when you came back?" Anyone else would have probably stayed far away. Sure, I was scared, but I knew I had to come back. "Haven't our teachers always told us to act courageously and uphold justice?" She spoke with a sense of righteousness. The weather that day was actually quite nice, sunny with a gentle breeze. Her ponytail fluttered in the wind, tickling my face, creating a pleasant sensation. "When did you learn to ride a bike?" "I only dared to ride alone today." "Could you tell?" She seemed a bit unsure. "Maybe we should just take a taxi to the hospital." "I'm afraid I might end up causing an accident." I laughed. "Don't worry, I'm not afraid of falling." I really shouldn't have said that because no sooner had I spoken than we lost control on a downhill slope and both of us tumbled off the bike. Luckily, I managed to catch her in time, cushioning her fall with my body. Ouch. The one who had caused the fall felt extremely guilty, and realizing she had fallen on me again, she felt even worse. "Are you okay?" "I'm so sorry. My biking skills are terrible." "I'm fine. What about you?" "Actually, that fall must have hurt quite a bit." My back had slammed against the curb, but at that moment, I really couldn't feel the pain. Afterward, she insisted on taking a taxi to the hospital, and fearing another accident, I agreed. At the hospital, she helped me register and waited until I had completed my examination before she left. I spent a couple of days at the hospital receiving treatment for swelling, then returned to school. Back on campus, I started looking for her everywhere. With 29 classes in our senior year, finding one person was not easy. Fortunately, I eventually spotted her in the campus. Her name was Susan, from class 9. She was modest and well regarded by teachers as a good student. As for me, I was the opposite, careless in my studies, sleeping in class, playing sports after class, and gaming after school. My continued presence in this prestigious school was solely thanks to my father's annual donations. After my exams, I went abroad. There, I shelved my playful habits and started to work hard. When I return, I'm determined to get to know her all over again. Life played a huge joke on me just as I was all set to. The day I returned to my country coincided with the day she was getting married to the heir of the Lincoln family group. She looked stunning that day. More beautiful than any bride I had ever seen. That evening, I drowned my sorrows in a bar, completely lost in drink. A friend asked me what was wrong. I said, "The angel in my heart has been taken away by someone else." Years later, I participated in a business interview. During the final segment, the host picked a question from an online audience member. "Mr. Simon, on behalf of an internet user, now that your company has gone public and your career has been hugely successful, is there anything in your life you regret?" "Yes," the host seemed surprised. "Would you care to share with us what it is?" "I regret not stopping the wedding that day and running away with my angel." After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.